should. Why is it still music playing?
That timer wasn't done yet.
I guess not.
There.
Oh, there we go. I got it. We should be good to go. How we doing? This is Eric for Game Mode Retro. I am joined by two of my friends tonight. We have David the Lame Dad and Chris from Downing's Basement.
Yep. What is up?
Hey guys, what's going on?
Oh man, just another Saturday, but wanted to have a stream. This has been planned for I think I don't know, a couple months now. It's been in the works for a bit, so excited we're finally all here together. And I just wanted to really just go into another episode of the Retro Gamer Chronicles, the RGC podcast, and talk about retro mods and kind of see how it's good for the industry overall, and kind of go from there and see where the topic takes us.
Yeah.
And I know, like personally, for me, like I was when Downing when we met at MGC at Midwest Gaming Classic, like I was not aware and did not properly appreciate the modding community and all that it's doing. Like the room there with everybody that had their own projects. This stuff's pretty crazy. It's pretty incredible the stuff that you guys are working on.
Yeah, it's definitely evolved certainly over the years from where it was when I got into it originally versus where it's at now. But yeah, it it's definitely been a community effort, as you said, and it's just as things have gotten more advanced in every way, shape, and form, it's taken on a very new feel, I guess is the best way to put it. But it's gotten I won't say a mainstream attention by any means, but it's definitely turning heads from some of the even the biggest YouTubers out there.
Yeah, and I think
Good.
like for me too. I think like when it comes to the retro gaming community, I think about how much it can do for people. So, for example, like if you don't want to have if you don't want to use a CRT TV and you want to use something like a newer TV. A lot of the hookups that I have, like the HDMI mods and things like that. So I feel like it's not just modding like a console; it could be modding like the output and things like that, which is great for a lot of people to experience like retro consoles in HD and whatnot. So that's also I feel like a really big like I have like the Retro Tank, another working on like a Retro Tank 4K. There's a bunch of other ones that are coming out I think as well, and that will help I think make the market even stronger when it comes to that kind of stuff, which is cool.
It is, and it's kind of a double-edged sword in some ways.
Hmm.
There's a lot of pushback, I guess, in some ways, whereas playing the original consoles and everything is great. Playing everything that was how it was meant to be played, even though most of us these days can't do that because we don't have that type of equipment and so forth to go, and
Right.
the ability to be, have that same type of experience on modern day equipment is still really huge. But um, oh, sorry, I'm
You,
getting Apple software updates, and I don't even have Apple.
the damn Apple.
Screw them. But yeah, I mean it's really just
I was thinking about it uh, earlier today, kind of just prepping right for the conversation and the Zoom call today. And I think we talked about it briefly at Midwest Gaming Classic, but the introduction of the 3D, or not the 3D, yeah, of the 3D printer, and
mhm.
like having that more readily available has really changed the game.
uh yeah, that has been a huge one. But more specifically, or another aspect of that, I guess, is like the ability to design circuit boards in a custom environment, or like a custom set, I guess, is what you need without having to go through all the huge labor costs of making just one board. The low volume manufacturing that's become available from, like OSH Park or PCB Way or JLC PCB, these places pretty much allow you to take whatever design you want and, for literally just a few dollars for several boards.
Right.
And that alone has been, huge. That's pretty much what modernized portable making.
And I think like the one thing for me, so you know, what's huge right now is the retro conventions, right? So that's huge.
Mhm.
And I think like what's so cool to see everybody kind of come together, and you know, David, you know, that's kind of how you met Chris, I believe, at one of the conventions, right?
Yep.
And I think that's kind of what it also is another aspect of the community that like has brought people together that normally wouldn't have met, and just obviously a lot of opportunities to you know make new technology and just like all that kind of stuff. So that's also a really big aspect because I feel like what 10 years ago I don't really think the retro you know game events and whatnot were really that. I mean, if they were popular, they weren't that like mainstream, I guess. Now I feel like it's like the cool thing to do to go to expos.
Yeah, I think like for example, I think Midwest Gaming Classic is like 14 years old.
Is it
So
okay?
yeah, it's
I actually
not
think
very
it's
old.
closer to. I think it's closer to 20 actually, from what I
20, okay.
understand.
Well,
Just about.
even still,
And
yeah.
even still, like I
Uh,
guess that's the thing too. I just really, I've always known they've been out there, but I feel like more like I don't know, more of a niche thing, maybe 20 years ago, and now I feel like it's a lot more mainstream, you know. But
Well, it was a few years. Well, I want to say it was probably back around 2013 or so
mm-hmm,
when things really started to kick off on this retro kick.
right,
And I think a lot of it came from. I won't say that portabilizing and console modding alone was responsible for it, but there was a lot of uptick within just a few years of like being able to go and buy a Super Nintendo with like three games for 15 or $20 off of eBay.
right,
Nobody wanted this stuff.
yeah,
And then something happened, and I think WADA is going to come up a lot in a conversation like this, whereas all of a sudden, within just a couple of years, the speculation market took off. And WADA and those game auctioneer places and game ratings, quality and whatnot, really just started to gain traction and popularity, and that just tipped the scale.
right,
It went from and from a modding aspect, that was a horrible thing because we went from being able to find all this cheap retro gear that was destined for a trash bin
right,
to having to pay $150 to get a motherboard or something if you wanted to, just mod around or make a portable out of it, and it was brutal,
yeah, and
and it
yeah,
still is that way.
it is, and I feel like the pandemic made it worse because
It did.
people were home buying a whole bunch of stuff. And I remember when like the Switch was like you couldn't get it anywhere for like the first a few months of the pandemic. They could, and the prices were going up crazy on eBay. And it's just like for a Switch, and you know, and yeah, I think that even like I remember buying. I think I bought like a Sega Saturn for like I think it was $200 during the pandemic, and like right before that, you can get a Sega Saturn for like $50, and now like everything has gone up.
Yeah.
So
Well, I mean,
crazy,
everything has gone up. It doesn't matter
right?
what it
Doesn't
is. It's
matter what it
gone
is.
through
Yeah,
the roof, it's but it's still like the retro was happening, well before the pandemic hit, and it kind of like put a lot of heat on modders too,
mm-hmm.
with those who are just wanting to tinker or whatever, because it just completely completely got people up in arms that, hey, this is this much, you're spending this much money for this, and you're just going to take it apart.
Right.
But there's also a little bit of a misunderstanding there on a lot of the um, people who are against it, because modders don't look for the pristine in box type situation. They don't look for the collector's things. I mean, we're looking for whatever we can pull out of the dumpster, that the parts bins that said broken as is, all that stuff that's just going in the trash anyway, and then we give it a second lease on life because we can make it work into something completely different.
So
And
that's a good.
that's
Yeah. Sorry, to cut you off. That's a good
that's
place
fine.
to start. So I want to, like so my question for you is when it comes to modding. So
Mm-hmm.
obviously you do it for passion. I don't know. Do you also sell some products to folks as well? Is like people like commission you to mod consoles and things like that too?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, it's mostly on a whatever time is available to me at this thing. I mean, it's not what I do for a profession. It's
Right.
it's
Right.
still a hobby. It's going to be that way, and that's kind of the way I've personally wanted to keep it.
Yep.
Because I mean, I've been in that situation before where you start doing something that you love doing, and then it just becomes a job.
Right.
It's not fun anymore. You don't want to do it anymore, and so I've tried very hard to keep it away from that. But yes, the commissions do directly fund whatever it is I'm doing. It
That's
keeps
great.
it out of the house accounts or whatever
Right.
from the regular um, the regular income type thing. And so yeah, I mean I've done a fair number of them, but it's like I said, I've got friends who have been in this modding and they started up their own company and whatnot, and it's they make retro peripherals or stuff specifically for modding, like the
Right.
4 Layer Tech guys. They make specific parts for the Wii portables that they make. It's pretty pretty insane stuff.
Right.
But
Oh,
it's just a couple of guys doing it, and they do it on their free time. That's still a business, but
that's still
it's
fun.
what they can do. Yeah.
Right. Well, what got you into the modding of consoles?
Well, so originally, I've always been an avid N64 fan. I've had
That's me.
them since
Yeah.
day one.
Yep.
Um, Saved up for it, got it, and everything like that. And then, of course, years later, I think it was 2000, 2008. I think I um I had a controller after I pulled the thing out of the closet and wanted to play it. And of course, the old N64 original controllers, the stick would wear out, and it
Right.
was
Yep.
just you'd be playing this loosey goosey thing, and
Hmm.
it sucked. And so I just went online one day trying to see if I could find some sort of fix for it. Just see if I could get that controller working again for the game I wanted to play. And in doing so, I did find a mod for it. I can't say it was probably the most technologically advanced thing at the time, where the guy's basic suggestion was just take apart the stick, wrap some scotch tape around the shaft, put it back in there, and you filled your gap. And just like, yeah, no, no.
Yeah.
So that didn't work out well at all. So I decided I'd just dig into it a little bit further, and then I found that this guy on YouTube had made a portable N64, and I think it was like from 2 years ago or a year ago or something like that. And I looked into it more. I'm just like, holy crap, this guy really
Yeah.
built this. And that's kind of what led me down the rabbit hole. And I mean, that guy was his name was Hailraiser, or John Jandarin, as a lot of people know him. But
Hmm.
in the modding communities, he was one of the forefathers. He was my inspiration, and he built this amazing thing, and it just kind of took me down that rabbit hole. And I think I started in 2009, and I like November or something like that of building one from the ground up, and I think I finished it about 6 months later in 2010, and then that's how it all kept going.
That's awesome, man. I feel like that's kind of how it is. Is like it just kind of hits you out of nowhere for like certain hobbies and stuff, and you've been doing it ever since. So that's really cool. And I think the one area that David and I, three of us were talking about was that how I personally think it's good for the community. I think that it has resurrected a lot of older systems that people probably wouldn't be playing
Mm-hmm.
unless there were certain types of like HDMI hookups or there was like a portable N64 like handhelds, things like that. So I do think that overall, I think it's good for the gaming industry.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it brings it to, well, there's also a whole nother generation here that's getting involved, which is another big thing
There you go.
because you get into the aspect where my son, we'll use him as an example. He's going to be 9 years old in October, and we've kept him off of tech for as much as we could. No iPads, no nothing like that. But
Mm,
the N64 again, and the portables that you see in the background, he's been all about those.
right.
He's into Pilot Wing 64 right now, and it's just like,
Nice.
I can't really complain about that. But he's also again playing it on an old school TV, something that was meant to be played with. Whereas in most cases, kids his age with parents maybe my age or even younger at this point aren't going to have that. They're not going to have this type of situation. So they're going to be playing everything on emulators. They're going to be doing whatever, even if they're playing old school stuff.
Right.
But
Yeah.
you bring it into the modern day with being able to upscale everything to make it look a little bit more. I don't want to say flashy, but a little less blocky. Something that they're not. Things that they're more accustomed to seeing. and they start playing this old stuff, then cool. But it's kind of like it's a fine line, really, as to how they're going to either embrace the old school technology as it is, or just want to go and play it on an emulator. Because I mean, realistically, that's probably where it's going to end up, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah, and I think a lot of us, like obviously in the retro gaming community, we all, we have EverDrives and things like that. So it's easier. Like if you're, recording a video instead of popping in 10 different cartridges, things like that, you have one. But this could go off on a tangent, but like to your point about like your son playing Pilot Wings, like my son's 17, and he's now getting into like he's always been like Mario Nintendo fan, but he's getting into like Nirvana and older music and like grunge and Alice in Chains and like all this stuff, and like he's loving it. And it's just so as a dad, it's just so cool to see our kids getting into things that we once liked. And again, what's old is new, and it's like he's going out and he's buying like Kurt Cobain shirts and things, and it's just like that's my brother was doing that like 20 years ago, and it's just like it's like kind of like a never ending cycle. Like kids will rediscover these kind of things, which is really cool. And then same thing for video games.
Yeah.
Yeah, Eric, you and I talked a lot about 20 years ago. We throw this term around 20 years ago. That's a real thing.
I know. we're turning into our parents. We're like, we're old now.
Well, and so like that was something though that really caught me off guard. And you mentioned it just a minute ago, Downing, was that this newer, younger generation of people is getting involved in the modding community and the modding aspect. Like the booth, the hall that you guys had at MGC, there was a lot of young people that were there that weren't just there checking stuff out, but like those were their ideas and their designs that they were helping build. So it was cool to see that.
Yeah, and it's 20 years ago, it was 1983. Yeah, sure it was. Sure,
yeah,
it was.
We wish.
Mm-hmm.
And then because I showed actually retro comparisons is Bill, and I showed Bill a meme the other day, and it was like what you think Sonic looked like 20 years ago, and it shows like Sonic 2, and it's Sonic from Dreamcast, and it's just like it's crazy like that's what it was 20 years ago. But we think of like back in like
the
early
Sega,
90s.
the early days, Genesis days. Yeah,
exactly. So that's awesome. All right.
That's why I also think that it leads a lot to be like we're just talking about this kids discovering this stuff that's just awesome and cool. Like this was like legitimate stuff. The N64 is a phenomenal console, and a lot of people won't get to understand or know how shitty those little sticks could be.
Right.
Yeah.
And won't get to experience that.
And it's funny because so again, our generation, we're all relatively the same age, and I grew up with the 64 and I love it, but there are a lot of people that are like a little bit older than us that like hate the 64. That they think the controller was terrible, then the graphics, the blockiness, was garbage. But like, I don't know, man. Like, I think that's what for us. I think the three of us on this, this discussion is like it's nostalgia, and nostalgia right now is totally in, and that's why I think retro gaming is so great. Because again, like. So one of my friends right now he's at the Long Island Expo that's going on this weekend. He was there today, and sending me pictures and stuff. And it's just like there's tons of people there, and like people are into the retro. Like money's going crazy there, but prices, as we talked about, prices are insane. So I did want to talk about WADA and what you guys thought about the grading of games, the grading of things like that. What do you think ultimately?
I think it's a smokescreen, which it always has been.
Right.
There's
a lot of really good documentaries I watched recently that were on YouTube. Insane.
Yeah, it's not anything different. I mean, the oil industry has been this way forever. And some kids got smart and decided just like, well, what's the next biggest thing that's going to really drive something that doesn't really need to be driven.
Right.
And
like
it's
the demand for it, yeah.
Yeah, so I really don't like voicing opinions of this type of nature.
But it's like, good. But I think like when it comes to the grading of games and things, I just think that like driving the prices up, obviously it's a business, so I understand that aspect of it, but I personally just feel like it's just overall that's a bad part of the community. I think that could go, a certain way, but like again, like during COVID, like all the price. What was the Super Mario 64 game went for how much? It was like
Oh yeah,
like
I don't remember the exact amount, but it was
it was
stupid.
yeah, and it's just like when people like again like they got it graded because it was sealed still and everything else. But I don't know. It's just we can go off on a tangent on that, but yeah, I definitely think that's one area that I think is probably not very good for the overall industry.
No, and we were talking about it a little bit earlier, where like Downing, you're looking for the console that's kind of beat up. You're looking for the game that's kind of beat. That's how I am. Like I enjoy finding games like out at conventions that have a blockbuster sticker on them.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Like to me, that's just like forget the graded crap. That's whatever. I mean, don't get me wrong. If I had a copy of Super Mario 64 that was sealed that I could sell for $1 million, I would,
right.
right? But
Mhm.
it's that nostalgia factor. I want the blockbuster label.
Yeah. Actually, I have a copy of Mario 64 with a Blockbuster label on
Hey,
it.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Kids will never know how epic a Friday night was with Blockbuster.
Well,
Yeah, I know.
yeah, renting video games like that's the thing. Like my son's 17, he has no idea what. Well, obviously he remembers Blockbuster a little bit, but like they're not going to have any really idea. My daughter won't know what a what a rental store was. They'll think it's completely crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Even now, if you go and like walking my daughter, my oldest daughter, she's 9, and she's really big into gaming, so it's a lot of fun with her. But we'll walk into like GameStop in 2023, and GameStop is like not a store anymore. I mean, there's hardly anything physical in there. They're there to sell consoles when they get them, and
Right.
it's she'll never get to understand just going and looking through a rack full of games unless we take her to a game convention, which we have, and she loves.
Mm.
That's the thing too. Like you like think about like a toy store. My kids think the toy store is Target. Like that's the toy store, right? Like when we were kids, it was like KB
Yeah.
Toys, Toys R
KB
Us.
Toys, Toys R Us. Yeah.
Yeah. And like Target's toy store, like we send that like my wife actually takes my daughter and my son likes in that too, like thrifting, but they go to like Savers and like a lot of times there isn't like a lot of really good games at like Goodwill and Savers, but there sometimes can be. But like
Mm.
that to them is like the toy store, because it's just something different.
Yeah. And it's just so easy, with the instant gratification that they get now with the TVs, just being able to flip through whatever's there and just watch it instantly. It's like
Oh
that's
yeah,
not the way it's always been, guys.
Right.
and I think Eric and I we talked about this before, but how between the three of us, how many times do we sit here get ready to play a game and we just look at game after game after game after game? What do I want to play tonight? And then you end up just wasting hours.
That's
Mm.
100%. Like literally, we talk about it all the time. Like with the EverDrive, you have every single N64 game, let's just say, and like you'll sit down for like with your buddy and be like, okay, what should we play? Back in the day, you only had like 3 games. Now it's
Right.
like when you have like 500 games, it's a lot tougher to make a decision.
And that's kind of why like I buy a lot of games on Steam. I'm pretty
Mhm.
much a PC gamer now. I have been for like 20 years, but I get them on sale and they sit there. I play the same 4 or 5 games
Yep.
I always play. I got hundreds of hours racked up on my
Right.
5 favorites. It's like, well, thousands actually if you count them all together.
And that's an area of the I want the discussion to go to is a lot of it. I hate to say the term FOMO, but the fear of missing out. A lot of people buy games just to let them sit on the shelf, and just because they want to collect. And again, collecting is cool. I have tons of collections of stuff, but I think we collect some things so we don't feel left out. We don't want to miss out on stuff. But
Collecting digital is a little different though. I
that's
don't
tough.
I don't see a whole lot of satisfaction in that other than just
That's
like, yeah, look at this list that I can scroll through for an hour and I'll never
right,
touch.
right.
It's
Did you get a Steam Deck?
I did, yeah.
Me too.
And I never my son plays it more than I do.
Yep. I feel like I use it if I travel for work. I'm on the plane or something. I'll bring it with me. But realistically,
Mm-hmm.
I don't use it enough.
I mean, I pre-ordered it. I waited a year to get it.
Same.
I've had it for over a year,
Yep.
and my son's racked up more hours on it than I have, like by a lot. I think I played about 40, 50 hours of Final Fantasy VII on it, and that's been it.
Yeah, and then I see Bill commented, I'm with you, David. It's the fun of the game, not how pristine the cartridge looks. So
That's
Mm.
right.
that's good there. And I did bring up, it's kind of small, but it's on the screen on the live version. I did bring up looking at your website here, Chris, and one of the things I wanted to talk about was again, obviously we know like the jokes about like, and again, I had Tiger games. We all probably had a bunch growing up. And again, like back in the day, I remember like thinking to myself, "Oh, this is so cool." I had like the Batman one and all the random, whatever. But I know AVGN, Video Game Nerd, made fun of Tiger for years and all that stuff. But what made you think about putting like a Game Boy Advance into a Tiger handheld? What was the motivation there? I love that.
Well, honestly, it was just kind of a random thought that just popped into my head one night. It's just I've been out of modding for almost 3 years. Because the last commission I did was an N64, and then I had moved, and we'd moved back in with my parents, and because it, long story, don't
Yeah.
have to get into it. But regardless, anyway, I didn't have I didn't have a basement anymore.
Okay.
I was out of a shop. I was just working out of the little space that I had my dad's basement for over a year, and so I needed to, but I wanted to get back into it. I wanted to do something that was I knew simple. It wasn't going to be super complicated, um, but something I could just kind of get back into instead of wasting years playing Steam again. Um, so it just kind of popped into my head. I'm not sure exactly what I saw, but I'm just like, I had a I had a board. I'm just like, that's pretty small. I can probably fit this into something like that without
Right.
too much work. And of course, that was the mindset. It's just like it won't be too much work. I should be able to do this easily and just be a fun little project. And that turned into a total, total reversal of what was expected it to be because,
Mm.
you know, the 3D printing I do like FDM and SLA. I do, the resin printing, the plastic printing and everything. And I designed the whole thing around SLA printing because I thought it'd be small enough that it would work out just fine, but it didn't. And then I had to go redesign it for FDM, and then everything I did too, I didn't use any circuit boards or anything like that custom. It was all just one-to-one wiring with tack switches and things like that. Aside from the upgrades that were in it, which were out of the box that you could plug right into the motherboard anyway,
Yeah.
so that wasn't a big deal. But it just turned into a 2 month project that I thought was only going to be a couple weeks.
Right. And then like
That's
are the buttons like the actual Tiger buttons from the? Or did you
Nope,
put?
no, no.
Oh,
Everything is
okay.
there's nothing real Tiger about that at all. It's
Okay, got it.
completely. It was my best approximation of because I,
That's
I
so
had
good.
I had one of the remakes, one of the
Oh
Tiger
yeah,
Boy
yep,
re-release or the
yep.
Tiger releases, which I have no idea why they did that. It was
Nostalgia.
nostalgia. It sucked back then. It still sucks now.
Right.
Yeah.
It was
Still
horrible.
sucks.
And so I had that, and I kind of approximated everything with it. But the screen, the IPS screen that I put in, the upgrade was also, twice as big as the original Tiger screen in there. So obviously that dictates the whole size of your casing and the whole size of everything, pretty much. And then the new batteries or the battery pack. Um, so all those buttons are actually 3D printed off of my SLA 3D printer.
Mm,
So everything's just redone from the ground up.
that's so cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it was a fun one.
Yeah, I mean, playing it at MGC, I played Doom on it.
Yep.
So I
Oh,
mean, it was fun,
that's awesome.
and
Yeah.
it was a Tiger handheld that didn't suck.
Right there you
That's
go.
right.
It didn't suck.
Who would have ever thought?
There it is.
Well, hold on. We'll switch it up here. That was the original one that was remade because the
Okay.
first MGC I brought it to, someone put their finger through the speaker hole and I had to fix it and
Oh no.
ended up just redoing the whole thing again. But this is the
Gotcha.
one that's for the giveaway. I don't know if the light's gonna let us see it or
Oh,
not,
yeah.
but
That looks so
That's
cool.
slick. That's nice, man.
That's so cool, man.
yeah.
Well, somebody, speaking of that, we really haven't brought it up and talked about it yet, but you are doing a giveaway. You are giving that guy away, which is
Yes.
really, really dope.
Yeah, it's not gonna have Doom with it. It's just gonna be the game
Yeah.
console. But
I gotcha.
yeah,
Is the contest entry ended yesterday, right?
yes, yes, it did.
Okay,
Yep,
that's so
yeah,
cool.
just fits right in there and
That's awesome.
That's
plays
so
them
cool.
all.
Bill says
Yeah, so
that's so freaking awesome. Yes, it is.
thanks, Bill.
I
Yeah.
secretly, it's no secret. I won't say that. I hope the hell I win it. Like it's cool.
I'm embarrassed to
Yes.
say I missed the entry. I saw it yesterday, and I'm like, I gotta enter that, and I missed it.
I
But
almost thought of like tagging you, but I'm just like,
I know I'm a bad friend. But that's super cool, Chris. That's so cool. So I guess one question I want to ask about that, like all in, like as far as like I'm not including your time, obviously, which is the most precious. But what do you think, like as far as like all like the the screen and everything else, like just to make that like like cost wise?
Crosswise. Um, so the screens, this one for the giveaway one was actually more expensive than the first one because that screen is now discontinued,
Okay.
which sucks because they went with an all laminate screen. It's a funny playing IPS screen mod that
Yep.
all the Game Boy Advances, you see them on eBay all the time or Etsy or
Right.
whatever. Everyone is using them now. And so basically it's a laminated cover that they use. This was just a screen that fit behind it. But that's now like 60 $65 and
Okay.
climbing because it's gone now.
Right.
And then the USB-C battery rechargeable pack that I put here, that's how this thing charges instead of
Mm-hmm.
using double A's or whatnot. Um, that was around $45, and that
Okay.
was more than the last time I paid for it as well. And then the Game Boy Advance itself, this is one that I had from years and years ago. I think I bought this one like 15 years ago or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
used or whatever. Um, I actually it was a motherboard I modded in one of my older videos. I
Okay.
attempted to put attempted to do the old school's screen mods where it had like four LEDs in the corners and then would
Mm-hmm.
just wash over the screen. It wasn't backlit. It total miserable failure. So all it was just a paint job. Um, and so I took that one and put it into here. So that didn't cost anything, but they're going now for like 125 bucks or so
Wow.
as they are, and it's
Yep.
like, ugh.
Yeah,
So
I've been trying to find one. They're stupid expensive.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, on that part alone, I mean, you're looking at
Yeah.
220 something dollars just in parts.
Right. I got not the
Um,
time. Yeah.
not the time, not the resin, not the casing. Although I can't take credit for this casing either because this one was actually part of the PCB way promotion. So they printed this for me, but it's printed in nylon,
Okay.
and that's a case that I've never used nylon before because obviously no one can afford to have their
Right.
own freaking nylon printer. Um,
So that's
and that
like
was
pretty.
cool.
How much would like so nylon's more expensive when it comes to I don't know anything about 3D printing. So
Well, this case probably would have been about 80 bucks to buy from them.
okay. Gotcha.
So it was a three-piece case. Um, and so total, not counting shipping or anything, was about $80.
Yep.
So
The one that you sent me was made. What was that one? What was that one made out of?
that was SLA.
That's
That was on my form three. So that the SLA has a very nasty habit of warping
Mm.
with anything that's like not organic. So like any flat planes or thin walls uh, has a really horrible tendency to do that. And even with the resins that they have specifically for it that are designed not to warp, they still do.
They still do.
I,
Yeah.
I tried to put that thing together. I tried to, and it just it would not fit
No,
at
no, it
all.
wouldn't. Coming off the printer, it was like that too, and that was even before it was cured. So I can only imagine what happened to it after it got some sun to it.
Wow.
Um, and it's just, but a lot of it too, that size casing is pretty much maxing out the Form Three's, ability to, well, the build plate version anyway, or the build plate of it. And so I had to angle it at this really weird angle. So like it prints a solid raft at the bottom and then, or, at the top, I guess you would call it. And then as it steps down and lifts up, it prints these supports, and then it'll actually start to print the print. But the problem is because it was so close to that raft when it started printing, because that I was maxing out the height, the tension and all the well, I guess the tension or the surface tension, I guess, was so tight that as it printed, it actually started to warp those edges on the bottom because the supports were actually pulling it closer to the build plate instead of keeping it separate, and that became a pretty big problem, as you saw.
Right.
The
And
the video that you have that you put out on it of you making it um, was pretty awesome. Um, we'll make sure that we drop the link for that in this video and attach it as well.
Yep.
I mean, like the devil's in the details with things anyway, and like that thing is so slick. The way that you designed it and detailed it um, is impressive.
thanks. Yeah, but it's just a culmination, of things that I've learned over the years, and the do's and don'ts, and how they get applied in the process. And I guess that's really what makes you good at anything.
Right.
Just
Right.
kind of understanding what's going to happen if you do this, that, or the other thing, and it takes time. But even though I knew it was going to fail, I still did it anyway. And then I
Right.
sent it off to you, and it worked out perfectly. So I guess it had a purpose. A
That,
purpose.
that's awesome. And that's one thing too. Like I bought a Nomad.
Oh,
I bought a Nomad, and I bought a Game Gear during the pandemic. I've always wanted one, so of course I buy them when they're at their peak. So I won't tell them how much I spent for both, but I had the LCD mod done for me. There's the RGB mod, but at that time they were out of stock, and because it's super hard to get during the pandemic. But the LCD screen for me is just like my buddy Bill was in the chat, brought his over, and I did side by side, and it's just like looking at the old CRT screens compared to the LCD on the Nomad. It's just freaking like unbelievable. So again, another win for modding.
Yeah. Yeah, it is pretty funny though, just to look at how much though, like, the CRT LCD screen is like it's kind of going backwards now.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've seen some amazing stuff, and especially even that MGC, my buddy Shank. I mean, he is so into CRT screens and how to get the most performance and maximum performance out of them that's possible. And he has just shown in so many ways that actual CRT screens for gaming are really better. I mean, you don't have to have nearly as high resolution or computing power to get some of the same effects, and like the refresh rates and the actual flow of it, because there's no real like shuddering that we don't really see it with LCD, but with CRT it's almost non-existent. And he showed me something on a Sony. I don't know if it was a PVM or what it was, but it was a CRT screen RGB that was running at an insanely high resolution, and it was better than any high def screen I've seen. It was absolutely incredible. But the portables at the time back then, as Noman days, they weren't there.
Yeah, I'm scrolling through some of your projects too. Like, so the newest N64 one is pretty freaking sweet. I think
Oh, that's so outdated.
is it?
Yeah, I haven't updated that site in years. But there's my first one though.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. The was that the
the Virgin 64, my
Gotcha.
first.
Okay, that's awesome. Does it still work? Do you still have that one?
No, that one
Oh, okay.
that one fell apart. Just I sold it to a friend of mine, and within a week or so, she had put her hands right through the thing. That was what you call a proof of concept design.
I got you. I got you. I love it. You recently did another one though, another video.
TC's here.
Oh, he is.
Yeah.
There he is.
Basic.
TC's in the house. Thanks for stopping by. So yeah, so as far as the newest 64 that you did, there was a newer one, right? That you just put out a video of.
Not in 64. The newest one I did was back, like in 2020 or
Okay.
2021. I am working on a new one though, like a brand new, total redesign for the N64, something that um, is more ambitious than I would have been able to take on by myself. But like I said, I had my friend G-Man working on the electronics for me, and
Okay.
those should be in house before too long. But the casework is all done. I'm doing some neat LED stuff on this one, um, so it's going to be a pretty cool um, upgrade, from 3-4 years ago when I did my last one.
That's so cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. So I know David. We talked a lot about obviously too, just like having Chris on, and I think number one, this has been fun so far.
Mm-hmm.
What, David? What do you think for you when it comes to like modding and or just like experiencing the retro consoles? What's something that you feel like that you love about like modding in itself and or like I obviously again I pay people to mod stuff for me, so I'm not getting into doing that myself. But what's something about the some of the consoles that you play that maybe mod a little bit that you like?
It's just very unique, and for years, Eric, I know you and I have seen pictures throughout years, on Instagram or Twitter or whatever of a modded console, but like putting modded console, like when I was playing the world's smallest N64 at MGC, little bitty tiny guy in my hands, which I'm used to tiny things in my hands, so like
Right when you said that, I'm like, he's gonna go there. Like,
I knew he was going there
there's no
too.
avoiding that one. No.
Perfect.
So like it was awesome to see it in the flesh, so to speak, and to play with it, to play 1080, which I suck at, but playing the full cartridge, right? No emulation. And I think like when we were interviewing Downing at the event, Downing told me to shut up in front of everybody and told me I was stupid during the interview, and I know what I was talking about. And when I asked him, I said, "Well," I was like, "How are we
I don't
doing
think
this
he remembers
like
that.
like Raspberry Pi?" And he was like, "No, you idiot, you moron."
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that sounds familiar now. If you
Okay.
said
Yeah.
that, then I certainly said that. Yes.
I have a Raspberry
That's
Pi.
my mindset was like,
Right.
just Raspberry Pi. And I was like, no, that's completely wrong.
Right.
Like, like this is all original hardware, just somebody's imagination. So I think it's very unique. And I think it's literally just whatever somebody can think of to do.
TC just put it in the chat. Remember when Lame
Yep.
Dad offended Chris on the bonus stage by asking if he knew what a Raspberry did it with a Raspberry Pi?
Yeah.
I remember,
That's awesome.
but it was valid. It was fair.
Yeah. No.
So
You were
okay,
just
I've been wanting.
uneducated at the time.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I would have probably said the same thing. So, David, you're not in the. It's not just you, man.
Dumbass redneck hick. That's pretty much what I heard. I'm just teasing. I'm just teasing.
Of course.
So like in that room we had the world's smallest N64, and then we had to have what was the world's largest Game Boy Advance.
Right behind it.
Yeah, that was the world's largest, right?
I don't know if it was certified, but it was definitely up there. Yeah, he was one of the old Ben Heck guys that built that, and he'd been around this lot longer than I had. And when he showed up with that, it was just like, holy crap.
Yeah.
But he built it the old school way. There was not a 3D printed part in there. There was not a circuit board. Everything was built with hand cut styrene, and every button was like a regular tack switch that was hand soldered to an original Game Boy Advance. And it just was a phenomenal piece of craftsmanship.
Right.
I mean, but it was. I was sitting, I've been sitting right behind it the whole table, and then all of a sudden there's this group of guys there that are playing with it, and all of a sudden all three of them freeze. And you see them look. And then they just walk out of the room. They're just like, what the
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they pushed the D-pad right through the case, and it was just dangling there, so they freaking broke it, and they just kind of walked away without saying anything.
That's
Wow.
terrible.
But that was also, that's how things were back then too. When you built things, is you had to expect that, yeah, you're holding things together with glue and popsicle sticks. It's gonna happen. But anyway, yeah, that was.
You're good. I think David was laughing. TC put a funny comment in the chat. Is that a true story, David? Would you happen to know if this is true?
I don't know, man. I cannot. TC is the most unpredictable person I know.
I feel like even for him, that's got to
I
like
just
not be
read that.
true. He's yeah, right.
So when he came to Texas and we went to the Austin Game Convention,
Yep.
he did crash out here in the man cave. It's all like basically his own apartment type area.
Right.
So I mean he could have
He
rubbed
could have
his stuff off.
anywhere, anywhere you wanted to. Yeah, that's hilarious.
As long as you don't have a banana mark on your seat, you should be okay.
That explains the stains.
That that explains the stains. Oh man, I also sunk. I also sunk in
Oh,
his basement bathroom.
oh,
If you don't know what that is, ask him. I don't want to ask him that question,
oh
especially
man.
not live on air. TC.
Oh god
Um,
damn. This
all
is
right.
how a conversation gets derailed real quick.
Well, hey, that's what's fun about the RGC. Well, anything is, I guess, nothing's off limits on this podcast.
Okay.
But right, well, I guess there probably is some things off limits. Don't get any ideas, Chris.
Well, don't get any ideas, TC. We don't need
Yeah.
his shit hanging out.
That's
here.
true. That's true. All right, so I guess that's one thing that's really cool to hear that though. As far as like, I didn't realize that like the gap in between, like getting back into for you, getting back into the console modding and everything. That's really cool to see that. And I'm assuming like getting back and doing like the Game Boy Advance must have felt pretty cool to get back into into that aspect there. So
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, it's not to say I wasn't doing other projects within the
right,
meantime. It's just a lot of a lot of the portables and stuff like that. You know, I kind of got out of it because the last one that I did, the Zelda one that I did, I think I sent you a picture of that one.
yep, that one's awesome.
Yeah, that was the second time I'd done that portable from the ground up. The first time it was called the Golden 64. I've got a video on it. The thing was done, completely done. And I went down to do a little bit of work on it the next day to finish it up. And the entire finish cracked and spidered all over the place. Like the entire thing was ruined. And I'd never seen anything like that before. But you're talking 40 hours of a job to be done within the next, I had 2 hours of touch up work maybe. And the whole thing gone. So I ended up saying, like, okay, at this point, it's just going to be easier to redo the case from scratch, take everything out of it, put it into a new one, and then call it good.
Mm-hmm.
But it just, that was one of the things that just totally derailed it for me. And even though it was an awesome project, okay, cool, yeah. Um, it, it seemed like a good foot to step back on, just say, okay, going out on a high note, this is good. Up until about I want to say probably about 4 months ago, when it came back again, even after 3.5 years of it being down there in Texas. Um, the
Love Texas.
Yeah, well, apparently it got some sort of heat issue.
Mm.
And I don't know if it was something that I did on my end or if the system failed or whatever it was, but the whole front and back of it sunk in, completely ruined again.
Wow. Again.
Terrible.
There was an image there that you showed like in a video of like a pile of N64 like parts. That's awesome.
Yeah, cases and stuff like
cases,
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and so I didn't have to take it back, but I think it's more of a courtesy thing because I don't like seeing my work fail like that. I mean, granted, it's been 4 years, and there's no warranties with these mods. There's nothing on that. Once you do this, it's it's a novelty item. It's good for a little while, and then most people get bored of them and they just sit on a shelf. That happens 90% of the time. But this was like a showcase piece for me. It was something that's like, wow, this is the coolest thing I've ever built, and I'm just like, okay, I'll fix this for you, but at the same time, it's like I'm building this new one at the same time, and I'm just like, this one's gonna have some contingency factors built into it that'll prevent what happened to that one happening to ones in the future. I'm just like, how about we just start over again? Third time's a charm, right?
Right.
And then you'll have a brand new, up to date, modern portable that will hopefully never have this issue again and just be a lot more fine tuned. But it's just that's the part of the thing. That's one of the reasons I got out of it. It's like I just didn't want to deal with that type of stuff again.
Right.
And I've only ever had two portables come back to me for fixes, and that was all due to component failures or whatever. But regardless, for a guy doing this in his free time, and how kids go, free time is not really existent anymore. Um, yeah, it's a lot to take on, especially with these other projects that I start taking on too, because it happens every time. Every time I say I'm gonna start up a new project, well, all of a sudden 2, 3 more just show up on the same plate at the same time. Oh, there's the golden. Yeah, God.
Yeah, I just feel like I think it's a super cool. And again, for you to kind of go to game conventions and spread the word. And do you feel like going to the conventions over the past what's the past year you've been going right back to conventions?
Well, I've been going. I started in 2018.
Okay.
I had to miss 2019 and 2020, obviously.
Right.
And I don't think I could go. I didn't go to 2021 either. But 22 and 23. So yeah, I've been to 3, but I started going there like 5 years ago.
Has that been good for like networking and like obviously you met David, right? You met TC
Yeah,
down there, so
it has. I mean, but it's been more or less networking with a more centralized group, like because all the people in the bit build or the console maker space,
okay.
we've all known each other for a very long time, but it's just a matter of us actually getting to get face to face.
Right.
And this past year there were a lot of people that I'd never met before that have been part of the forums and everything that I've heard about. I've seen what they've been doing, incredible stuff, and then to actually get out there and meet them face to face was awesome. Um, but the external networking, if I wasn't on the bonus stage, I wouldn't have met TC or Lame Dad, because I wouldn't have been up there. I would have been stuck in that room
Right.
constantly. But like the year before that, though, when the oh, come on, come to me now.
That's what happens
Yeah,
as we get older. I forget things all the time when I was on talking.
I know exactly who I'm trying to say, but the guys who ran the bonus stage last year,
Okay.
I know, and Brad was one of the guys, and Tom. Uh, it's not Raw Dog. It's anyway. They run a podcast anyway that I got to meet those guys, and through those guys, I met John Riggs and Metal Jesus
Oh,
and a
nice.
few other those guys.
Yeah.
And so I mean that was another huge thing like that. But then you get back to our room, and some of the people that have been a part of this, like I've known before, and then seen them grow and then absolutely just blow up. And my like I said, I mentioned my buddy Shank, my buddy G-Man. G-Man was the one who made the portable N64, the smallest one that you were playing, and he's the guy that's helping me with the N64s that I'm making now. But then Shank, who I was at a meetup before at Gunner's house back in Massachusetts when he lived there, and met him and had a good time, and met him a couple times after that. And then his he made those GameCube Joy-Cons, the ones
Oh
that
yeah.
absolutely blew up all over the internet, and that brought him all over the place. He's been on LTT, he's been everywhere, and I don't know, I think he's around like 400,000 subscribers or something like that now. It's
Wow.
something ridiculous.
That's fantastic.
But he's awesome, and he's very well good at what he does, and so he's it's what he does now. So it's just really cool to be able to know that you met these guys at these places and seeing where they go from there.
Right.
And it's watching TC and Lame Dad's channel grow too since then. It's been really cool to watch.
100%. Like that's the thing for me. I've been doing. I think this July would be probably 3 years for my channel. I think this past July, and that's how I met Lame Dad right around the same time.
Yeah, we started around the same time.
Which is insane. And it's just like the people that I've met through this, and then just the networking, and it's just been a lot of fun. A lot of times, we talk about all the time, but like I felt pressure at the beginning of like putting videos out, and then I would like kind of stop, and then I'd be like, oh, I should probably tell people like why I'm taking a break, and I just kind of got over that and realized, you know what, I'll do videos when I can, and obviously when life's family and work and all that stuff, and I just want it to always be fun, And
Mm.
I'm sure you're the same way with modding. You want it to be fun. If like you said, it feels like a job or a chore, you don't
Right.
want to do it as much. So,
Yeah. And yeah, it's kind of the same boat. I mean, I was a musician too for a long time,
okay,
guitar player and
yep,
in bands and stuff like that. And it's like it was, what I wanted to do, but when it got down to it, it's just like, okay, you do the math and you got to do so and so many shows per
oh,
week
making
or
money,
whatever to
yeah,
just make your money to, even pay the rent for a place you're not even living in anymore because you're out on the road or whatever. It's just it got to be to the point where it's like, is this gonna make me hate this? And
right, yeah,
I didn't want to do that. I ran into the same thing with the modding. I mean, I haven't, you know, I'm not huge. I don't have that type of leverage or whatever to go off and say I'm gonna give it a try even. But
mm,
even if I did, it's like, am I kind of just holding myself back here at this point, is or is it a blessing in disguise that it never took off?
right,
It,
Yeah.
it, it's hard to tell.
Well, I think
yeah,
like
But
yeah,
like you mentioned earlier, being able to keep it as a hobby. I think that's key is having that hobby, that getaway, that stress, that where whatever you're doing with work or whatever you're doing with home, you can
mhm.
focus and like engineer this project, to just be a legitimate project is awesome.
Yeah, and I think that's really what it comes about. Is really what the modding scene was founded on to begin with. Um, it has grown to be a lot more than that now, and rightfully, if anything is going to keep growing, that's going to happen. There's no way around that. Um, but what I like about that fact, though, is it still remained a pretty tight knit community effort,
mm,
and that the same people are making these constant upgrades and big mods, and then the new people that are coming in are building off of that and coming up with new ideas that we might not have thought of, obviously. And it, I guess it's cliche to say it's a cycle, but obviously there's no other way to say it
yeah,
because, like you said before, that the old becomes the new, and
yep,
But
yeah,
it is refreshing, and don't get me wrong. There's a lot of I can't really stand this newer, younger generation. I'm just not a fan, like most of us, right? But having this
David, you sound like a
centralized,
boomer right now.
I know, right?
that's my
Having this
nickname.
centralized hobby of video games that's just taken people and brought people together, and these young kids, this new generation that's coming into the modding community, having that fresh take and that fresh idea, I think is kind of cool too.
Mhm. Well, I mean, they're going to bring into some that, I mean, they're pretty much imperative. I mean, they're going to bring new ideas with new technologies that, we never would have studied or whatever. Never had a reason to. We are set in our, no, I won't say set in our ways, but set in our ways,
Yeah,
and throw this new curveball into things. And, like when the low volume manufacturing came into play, yeah, that was awesome. But then you had to have people who knew how to make the boards and everything. And that back then there was only a handful. But now, I mean, this stuff is almost taught in elementary school. And so you get these people that are coming up out of, even if they have just high school experience, that's light years ahead of where we were when this first started. So, and the coding and the software was another huge thing because a lot of these custom made circuit boards aren't any good without some sort of microcontroller or something coded into them that will do what you want it to do. And so that became a whole nother
mm,
aspect that really just made these type of portables or this type of modding, i, I won't say gather a lot more attention, but really bring a lot more people of different skill sets into the hobby.
Right.
yeah. When you're talking like chip design, that's engineering on a whole nother level. Um,
Or it's not necessarily chip design, but it's utilization of what's already existing. But again, it requires, how do you route that design? Like, how do you take this chip that will do what you want it to do, but how do you make it do what you want it to do? And that's probably, the hardest part is knowing what does what needs to go where, and I guess the most efficient way to do it. And these guys know it. These kids know it, and it's just so been so. I guess you could say revolutionary if you want to put it that way. It really is. I guess the same way when 3D printing came out. I mean, that was the first step in it, and then when you were able to design your case enclosures from the inside out, basically, you could design your own components. You could design the case to fit with them, or vice versa. You
Right.
could take something that was working and then design around it. And that's actually how it started. Is that you could now 3D printing instead of having to glue support posts or whatever, you could build them into the case, and that was huge. But then the next step is when circuit boards came around, or low volume circuit boards. You could design those as well ahead of time, and then design your case around the things that you designed first, and then and you're making a brand new product at that point. It was just huge.
I have to ask though. So, how small was the mini N64? Like, how small are we talking? Like, you were like,
Uh, the uh, the one that he had was just, as far as the footprint goes, was just about the same size as the cartridge.
wow.
Yeah,
Oh, I think
yeah,
I did see that. Okay, I think I
just
saw it.
slightly bigger, not by much. Just a shell that housed the 64 cart. So, Downing, let me ask for anybody that's, or for the people that are listening, that maybe are getting interested or intrigued in this crazy mad scientist hobby of modding, what would you tell them? What kind of advice would you give to them?
Well, basically, know do your research ahead of time and know exactly what you're getting into, because there are fairly easy mods out there now. It's the resources that are out there available for you to start from the ground up is vast compared to what it was back when I got into it, or back even further than that. You have whole repositories of information on every system, every console out there, that tells you this trace goes to here, so you need to put your wire there to go to this button.
Hmm.
All of it is there. It's just a matter of digging in a little bit and doing the research. And you do that up front, things are going to be a lot easier, because you just have to really understand that a lot of us that are still doing this are bombarded all the time by the basic questions that are already out there.
Right.
And I won't say that it hasn't made the anything a less friendly place, but you know it's here. We've held your hand as far as we can go, because we can lead you to everything you need to know, but your hands have to build it.
Right.
And so doing the research and setting your expectations are probably the biggest two things that I would say to get going, because the first thing, you're not going to be building these full-fledged portables from the ground up, even with like the Yoshida, which is pretty much everything is available to you. All you have to do is cut down the Wii, wire it up, and then, which is still pretty hard, but wire it up and then put all
And
the buttons in there.
I would destroy every. You're talking about cutting things and wires. I would blow it up. I'm sure.
Yeah.
I I think that for me, just looking at as an outsider, and something that I think is a exceptional quality, is you almost have to be, you really need to be prepared to fail,
Mm-hmm.
and be able to accept that failure, and accept it and own it and go, okay, let's do this differently. And like you said, with the golden 64, you know, like that's kind of brutal. That sticks with you. But I think that you got to be pretty damn resilient to keep up with it.
You got to enjoy pain. That's, I guess.
Yeah. Right. That's a good way to put it.
Well, but I mean, there are going to be those moments. There's no way around it. But those are also the best teaching tools. There's Failure has always been the best way to do it. But having the resolve after you fail is also the hardest part, especially when you've sunk tons of hours, or more importantly, money, nowadays, like we said, we're going back, the consoles are stupid expensive. You spend
Yeah.
$100 on this console that you're just going to take apart and use for this project, and then you short out, the 3.3 volt line, fry the whole thing, and then you're out $100.
Right.
So you know the expense of this hobby has always been high, and it's just been exacerbated over the past several years. But when you get into that, and then just the total demoralization of that type of failure, it can knock a lot of people out of it real quick.
Right.
Yeah, I can see that.
But there's no other way around it. There's no classes for this type of stuff. There's nothing that you can go out there and do aside from just learning on your own on the internet. I mean, sure, you can go out to get electronics school, or electronics manufacturing, or electrical engineering, that type of stuff. But then you get into that and you're really good with all that, and then you go to build a case, and all of a sudden your 3D printer's got a thick block of blob underneath it because you didn't design the casing right, and it just lifted right off the bed. There's so many factors, that just have to align, and there's no way you're going to get it right on the first try, unless you're G-Man, who's kind of a freak like that.
He's like a freak of nature. He's so good at it. So my thing too. So like more recently, I had, so when I bought like the Saturn a couple years ago, I had I think it's the Fenrir, was like you could mod it basically so it can play through an SD card, or like a micro SD card basically. So I have that on the Saturn, and that for the Dreamcast. And again, that's a mod that like allows you to just use it through HDMI. It looks fantastic. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely an ease of life feature,
Yeah.
right? I haven't delved into the modded console world yet. I'm still a virgin in that sense. I haven't purchased anything like that yet, but I've been looking at some stuff lately.
That's cool. Yeah, and there's a lot of things out there too. So like I'm a big fan of My Life in Gaming, the YouTube channel, and I met them a couple times at one of the local conventions to me, and again, they're big on like, there's a lot of like companies out there that will like what's the word, plagiarize or copy other people's products, like and it's terrible. That's also like bad for the industry. When again people are not stealing people's designs, and or like there's a lot of clone systems and a lot of like clone products,
and a lot of that's happening in the PCB market. Voltaire, he's one of the guys I watch all the time, and
he's great videos.
And he knows his shit, and it shows. But at the same time, it's just him, his friends, and Retro RGB. Those guys Bob. Bob.
Yep.
They do some amazing stuff, and just you watch the Chinese companies just go out there and clone. It's not even just Chinese though. I mean, it's just you make your project open source, and it's always a risk, I guess. But at the same time, there could be a little bit of the courtesy and consideration, but there's not. The rest of the world doesn't have the same tight knit community in-house build type mentality, and it kind of takes the wind out of the sails of some of these guys, which is really unfortunate.
Yeah, so like I have the retro tank right now, but before that I had the OSSC, and actually I raffled that off my channel I think last year, and GameCube Galaxy won that one, so shout out to GCG. But the OSSC, I think there was a company that kind of ripped them off, and like, even though it's like you said, open source scan converter, like it's open source, but there's certain things that like you can't go and copy verbatim,
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. I mean, you can do it if you want to build one yourself. You can, but then that's the problem. It's like open source was made for those who wanted to try and do it themselves, not for those who wanted to try and market a product,
make money. Right, exactly.
And those lines are kind of, well, I won't say they're blurred now. I mean, Prusa is another really good example. The 3D printer maker. All of their stuff is open source, but they're probably one of the most ripped off rip design 3D printers out there,
Hmm.
just because of, obviously their success has been huge, but at the same time, it hasn't hurt them at all because they know that their kits, their um, actual product that if you get shipped directly from them is going to be the real deal. And there's some branding around there that I think they were able to jump on top of very quickly. That I won't say made them immune from it because it can still do that, but that their reputation is awesome and that this particular part and these kits are going to do what you want to do. So yes, it seems like a pretty low hanging fruit for people to clone and steal, but the name is there. Everybody knows, and that's
Right.
kind of one of the unfortunate side of things that for some of the smaller guys that are doing this and making themselves open source, some corporation is going to rip them off, and no one's going to know any different, which sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely another layer to the pain, as you so said a minute ago,
Mm.
enjoying the pain. Um,
Yep.
like you said, it's so many things have to line up just right.
Yeah, and that's tough sometimes.
Yeah, I bet. So, all right. So you mentioned let's talk about video games a little bit here now too. So you mentioned 64. So is that your number one console of all time for you?
Console, sure.
Okay.
Gaming system, no.
Okay.
No. Like I said, I switched to PC probably back in the early 2000s,
Okay.
and it you know, just a much more versatile platform, and
Right.
the upgrades that you could do as you went. Back then, obviously, hardware was a much more bigger. Well, actually, hardware was a big factor, but you could get a lot more for a lot less back then. You didn't have to buy a $700 graphics card to be able to play
Right.
the newest AAA title or whatever.
Right.
Um, I still would go out and buy the biggest one though, because I was still like, I want to be at the top of it. And when I couldn't run Crisis, I was just like, shit, got to start over. And but that's the way I've always gone and upgrade the card or whatever from time to time, and it's still I think a better interface and a more versatile thing to have.
Right.
One tool for everything, and that's kind of the way I've gone with it.
Yeah, my son right now, he's more. I feel like he's more into PC gaming than he is anything else. Like he has a Switch and he plays that sometimes, but it's more like the PC. He plays all like the I don't know Valorant and all that stuff. You know. But I do think for me, if I had to pick a system, I would probably say for me, Genesis is my all-time
Mm.
favorite console, and then 64 is a close second for me there. But what do you think, David? What about you?
Um, so I miss playing like RTS games on PC. I can't do PC games anymore. I sit at a computer all day every
For
day.
work, right?
Yeah,
Mm.
so I can't do PC gaming anymore. But the Nintendo, the original, the NES is still one of my main go-tos. And then probably the 64 or the GameCube. The GameCube had so many awesome games and some of my just favorite franchises
Mm-hmm.
that got put over there, like Resident Evil and stuff like that.
Right.
That I just like we talked about when we first got on the call. Like I think I have a relatively small game collection. It's around 800 games compared to a lot of other people.
Yeah, more than
You
me.
know, um, but I sit there and like I play the same 10 or 15 games. Just repeatedly. Like
Mm-hmm.
how many times can I beat Resident Evil type stuff? So
Right.
um, I don't know. I mean, it's we all have our own poisons, our own takes and interests on them, but it's definitely unique to this. The 64 was kind of our era.
Right.
Mm. Well, I
It
mean, the
was.
PlayStation obviously was right there with it. I mean,
Yep.
that's kind of thing. And obviously, probably my most favorite game of all time, though, is definitely, well, I got two of them, I guess, but split between the two systems is, Ocarina of Time is probably definitely my favorite
Yep.
N64 game, but
Great game.
my favorite game of all time was probably Final Fantasy VII, and that was like huge on the PlayStation. My parents were a little old school. It's like you got an N64, you went through hell to get that fucking
Yep.
thing.
Yep.
You are gonna keep it, and you're not getting anything else.
Right.
So I could never play Final Fantasy VII. I just went over to my friend's house and alienated his entire family.
I think we all have stories like that. Like I didn't grow up with the Super Nintendo. Like my friend, I had the Genesis, he had the Super Nintendo, so I played at his house. Like I didn't get one until I got older. I think we all have stories like that. Like our friends had the cooler stuff.
Yeah. Well, another one of my friends had a Genesis, and of course, Mortal Kombat had the blood code.
Yep.
Super
Right.
Nintendo didn't.
Right.
That's the way
Sega
things were
does
back in the
what
day.
Nintendo don't.
Don't exactly.
Yeah. Here you go. But yeah, I think like ultimately, like for me, like for this, I know David and I are super excited to have you on, and I think we're gonna have to do this again. And I
Yeah.
think what's so cool about the RGC podcast is like it can be about anything. David and I have talked about movies before. We did a Quentin Tarantino episode. We've done video games and like all this good stuff. So yeah, I think number one, this has been a lot of fun, and I just wanted to really take a second to highlight you. Obviously, meet you,
Thanks.
which has been great. And we will definitely will put links, everything else in below there as well. But as we're wrapping up, as we're talking, David, anything else like just as we're sitting here, we can talk through and.
No, Chris, just you want to take a minute and talk about your giveaway and what you've been kind of what you got going on with that?
That'd be great.
Yeah. Well, I mean, basically, like I said, it was just a giveaway for the second Tiger Boy that I built, and honestly, it was just a idea of trying to promote my channels a little bit more. I had most of this stuff was I won't say in house, but it was also a sponsorship from PCB Way. So it was like, okay, well, let's just pass this along. And yeah, there was a decent pool on Twitter and a decent pool on YouTube. So I'm gonna be going through those names over this weekend and picking out some finalists and whatnot. And assuming they're all good with the terms and whatnot, I plan to do another live stream or video, depending on what I've got time for, obviously. Um, with all the winner or all the finalists going into a hat, and then we'll pick a winner, and whoever that is, it gets sent, and we're good to go. Um,
This could be
and
yours. There it is.
yes, that could be it. Oh, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, and actually, next week I've got a friend of mine from Wisconsin coming over, and we're going to let me try this way. We're going to work on finishing off this air hockey table that I've been building for
Oh
two
man,
years.
that looks super cool.
Um, yeah, it's not quite done yet, but it's I think it's got 600 RGB LEDs behind it,
Whoa.
and there's going to be a scoreboard on the top. The goals have got infrared sensors on them, so that when you score a goal, it'll trigger the scoreboard and everything on top. And it's all Doom themed.
Dude, you are
So
smart as shit, man.
I told you, like mad scientist,
Like I
man.
feel like as he's like talking, I'm looking at him like like what am I gonna have for lunch tomorrow?
no.
Like
Seriously, mad scientist, like
Dude.
genius.
Well, that's why my friend's coming over there because he knows all the coding stuff. He's the guy that's doing this, but this is actually run off a Raspberry Pi.
okay,
So
okay.
I'll give it to that. I'll give it to that. But
Ooh.
but one of the cool things that this is gonna have, it's gonna have like three game modes. So one is gonna be a Doom theme mode. So every time that you score a goal on either side, it's gonna be the sound of like the Doom Slayer dying or a
That's
demon
awesome.
dying, whatever. And the scoreboard's gonna show.
That's super cool. I like from Wolfenstein. My name
My layman.
yeah.
But this is the scoreboard that's going to be up there. It's got a
Oh, yeah.
screen, LED
Very-
backlit, and everything, and controls. That's just going to mount right on the side there. But like I said, the three modes it's going to have is going to have the Doom mode, just a regular air hockey mode, but then it's going to have an emulation mode.
Okay.
Whereas you can play games on here just via a regular controller, but the games are also going to be overlaid or LED mimicked on the
Oh,
board.
oh, nice.
Oh, okay.
So what you're playing up here is going to show down on the LEDs,
that's really cool.
and actually your gameplay is going to be on it. So it's going to be pretty sweet. But it's like I said, this got into an area that I'm not really too familiar with, and I mean, I did design the board and 3D printed it all from scratch. There's a whole lot of CNC work on there, whole lot of 3D printing. It was a big project, and it was supposed to come out a year ago, but you know, life happens.
You got a lot going on, man.
Yeah.
It reminds me like like back in the day, like you go to local arcade and the air hockey table and like all that kind of stuff, man.
Yeah.
Like things of the past, you know.
Yeah, and it's a 2x3. It's a mini air hockey table, and
That's
I didn't
dude,
want to go too
that's
crazy, but
awesome.
it's still it's and it actually works though. You power it on and
Yep,
the puck goes what it's supposed to do. It's got two blower fans on the bottom that push the air up through it, and it's all run off of a PC power supply.
mad scientist, David. He is.
Genius, man. Like just genius.
I just think it's
Ah,
great that he made fun of you though. And there's Raspberry Pi in that thing, you know. I love it.
I
I
tell you,
love it.
everything comes around.
I
Everything
know
comes
it
around.
does. It does.
But
Um,
I can't even say I'm not emulating games on that either, can I?
No,
No.
no, I
you're
mean,
not.
yeah.
How can I put some original gaming hardware in this thing?
I know, right? You should put like a screen underneath like the the ice there.
Well, that
The
was
board.
actually suggested too.
Was
Actually,
it?
Shank had mentioned that. It's just like if there was a way you could get the air to go between the screen and the
Right.
Latin, you could put a 1080p or even a 4K screen for that matter underneath there, and then have 100% like sharp quality whatnot on there. But I put a custom graphic on the top of it. I work at a print shop for my real life. I do a wide format printing. That's where the banner stand came from. That's where all
Oh,
this
okay.
stuff that I do, the CNC work that I do, we got a big machine there that I run.
That's awesome.
Um, so I've got access to all this cool stuff that I'm, starting to implement here. Um, but yeah, having a 4K screen underneath there
That would be so
with
cool.
whatever programming or whatnot I want on that would just
Right.
be freaking cool. But
That that is
hey, I'm starting out
fantastic.
small.
You say you start out small, and I feel like the stuff that you're talking about is like way above anything that I can think of doing. So that's
It's a
fantastic.
lot of small steps, just
Yeah.
you know, piled on top of one another. But there's I think I don't know if I did a video or not. I know I've got some small video of showing the progress or something like that I did on that table, but it's I think I put it on my site. I don't think it was on my YouTube, but
Oh, okay.
it's somewhere to check out. But
I
yeah,
don't even know what to
six.
call it. Like, do we call it X now? Do we call it Twitter? I don't even like. I'm so
Oh,
lost
jeez.
now.
I
I'm like,
Hey, Lido.
gotta
Hey,
support
buddy,
my
how you
boy.
doing? Lido. Now this guy has been here, been with me, I guess you'd say, since the very, very beginning.
Okay,
So this guy, thank you for coming, buddy. It's good to see you.
that's awesome.
This guy's a shit. He's
That,
anytime anything comes out new or whatever, very first one, he's on it.
yep. I have one of
Awesome.
those too. David and I, we have some folks, Mike C and Shotgun. We got some folks that
Okay.
are in Bill too, that are all over videos, and we appreciate the support. Like again, like I look at it like this, right? I don't care if there's like 5 people watching or there's 100, whatever it's going to be. I want to put some good content out that people like, and I do it for us, right? Like, but
Hmm.
I want people, like, if one person enjoys it, we're successful. That's the way that I look at it. So
Yeah, yeah, but you can't do it without the support of you know like my
people
buddy
like
here.
Lido, yeah.
Yep,
Thanks
Lido's
for stopping
awesome.
by. That's awesome, Lido. Thanks for stopping by. Cool stuff, David. What do you got in the works, David? Any? You've been pumping out videos, man. I got to catch up to you, dude.
Oh no, man. I go to these game conventions and I do this type of stuff, and I get like a rush of just let's get it type
Right.
stuff, right? I get some good motivation and some good innovation. So I do have a video coming out tomorrow. Um, I actually resubscribed to Video Games Monthly back
Okay.
in March,
Okay.
and I have filmed every unboxing and just never uploaded them.
Okay.
Uh, so I do have um, their video coming out tomorrow. A little bit different. I've done it a little bit differently. I'm trying to kind of redesign the office here.
Mm-hmm.
I've got the desk all set up, It is August, which is also Madden month. Um, so
Yes, you had
uh,
mentioned that. I got to figure out something.
that's a big thing for the channel. This is the year we're gonna do it. So we'll have the Madden sucks video
Yep.
that's gonna come out towards the end of August, which it's a community thing. And
I'm looking forward to seeing it.
dude, I like your clip was awesome. I love it. I've gotten quite a few in, and so it's every year that video just grows, and I love it. I love what people send me. That the Madden sucks video is by far my favorite video to work on every year, hands down. I absolutely love it. But at the same time, I'm doing another video about Madden that's just a pure passion project,
Awesome.
um, that I'm really stoked about doing. I've wanted to do it for years now, and so really stoked to do that one. That's kind of what I'm working on right now.
That's awesome. You know what's funny? Like a lot of people, like in like video games, oh, they make fun of sports games, but like I feel like everybody's got a Madden story. Like, and again, like maybe it does. The gameplay sometimes sucks, but like again, when I talked about dropping your video, but like Madden 64 and like different things, and like there's nostalgia there, and I feel like everybody's got a good story for the most part about Madden. So I think it's a great topic. That's
Yeah,
super
I'm
cool.
excited about it.
I never played sports balls games.
Sports balls.
Could no, could never get into them.
You don't play Tecmo for like for Nintendo?
I might have
Tecmo Bowl?
dabbled in it once or twice, but
Yeah.
never really got into it. I mean, I think probably the most the baseball or the games I played the most were baseball games, like
World Series
RBA
baseball.
baseball was
Yeah,
probably the
RBI.
biggest one. RBI or bases loaded. Um, and then my brother, though, on the other hand, he was all into the sports games, and I think Ken Griffey Jr. Presents was one of his favorites.
Yep.
Yeah,
And
I
I
think
like
Dave
that one
likes that
too,
one. Yeah.
actually. I like that
yeah.
one too,
I'll run through
Lido
it. You just
but never played the football games.
Lido says NCAA football 14. Was that the one that's worth like a ton of money? Wasn't there one?
yeah, yeah.
That's the one, right?
That's the last one. Um, and so there, I want to say there's a new one coming out next year. That's
Okay,
all licensed appropriately and all that stuff.
that's
Um,
pretty cool.
but
Yeah,
yeah, 14 is a great one. I've been playing 12 NCAA 12 on the 360 a little bit here and there.
I
So
forget. Does it have players' names or it can't because of licensing and?
it can't. And then was it? I think it was Kevin Love who snitched and ratted everybody out and ruined it. You lost
Oh, right.
March Madness games. You lost the March Madness, the College World Series, NCAA. So
Gotcha.
Allegedly next year, he says.
Allegedly.
Eh.
they've been saying that for years, I think, though. So
Is that why you're saying allegedly? You're probably right. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and then like I think so. I got to work back with Bill. We're gonna come out for retro comparisons and Game on Retro. We're gonna do our new season of GMR versus RC, where we kind of go head to head and play games together, which is a lot of fun. So we'll start working on some more of that content, and just in between like traveling and everything else. But no, this has been a lot of fun, guys. Like I'm sorry if I'm like tired. I feel like this has been like a long week. My job went through a bunch of stuff this week, so it was a bunch of good stuff, but just
Yeah.
busy. But this has been a lot of fun. And before we kind of close out, I mean, Chris, I'll give you some more time. Anything else you want to share? Anything around like any upcoming projects or just anything in general?
No, I think I've pretty much covered, what was, what's current. The air hockey table. I mean, August has been a hell of a month. Personally, and then project wise, this competition or not this giveaway wrapping up. My buddy flying in from Wisconsin. That's happening on Thursday, and then trying to get this N64 design wrapped up, and I've been working on
Yeah.
that for months now. It's just it's been a lot, and it's all kind of like culminating in August.
Right.
On top of that, I was on vacation last week for 8 days, so things kind of took a hit there. But you know,
Good for you
and
guys.
my son though, personal level, whatever, he conquered his fear of going underwater, started swimming underwater when we were on vacation, and just today started riding his bike without training wheels.
Dude,
So Woo!
That is awesome. So, how old's your son?
Well, he's going to be 9 in October, so
So,
he's a little
yeah,
late bloomer in that regard. But finally, it's just like this. You're waiting for it and waiting for it. It
yeah.
finally happens. Just like
My daughter she'll be 7 this month actually, and she just went underwater like recently for the first time. And again, working with her for the longest time, and she finally conquered her fear and did it. And it's just like once like you see them believe in themselves, it's like it's so great.
sooner than I thought.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh,
do you have me still? I lost you for a second.
yeah. I'm back now.
Okay.
I
It
got
says
you.
my internet connection is unstable.
It's just like once but my daughter's going through the same thing, and like once it clicks and you see them believe in themselves, it's so cool.
Yeah, and that's been his hardest thing is believing himself. His sister's 2.5 years younger than him, and a year ago she was already swimming underwater like a fish. It's just
Yeah, everybody's different. Yeah,
yep,
you know,
it is. It's cool to watch, but
it is cool.
man.
I know, it's definitely tough. And my son's 17, so they're 10 years apart. So it's just like he's driving and she's swimming. So it's like it's great.
10 years.
Yeah,
Wow.
crazy. So
Yeah.
awesome stuff. All right. So what I'm going to do is I am going to I'll start closing this out, but I will post in the description. Please check out Downing's Basement. Check out Chris's information. Some really cool things, and he's also a great guy. And if you message him on Twitter or on X, he'll probably get back to you. And I think ultimately, like this has been a great collaboration with the Lame Dad. Thank you, LD, for introducing us, together here. And I think we're gonna have to do this again soon. And maybe we can even get TC to drop on by, or
Oh, that's a recipe for disaster, man.
I'll have to make sure I bleep him out for everything he says. Though like every other word is like "f this."
Well, if you want to keep it a family channel, then
I know,
you're gonna have to just not have him on at all.
That's true.
It'll be RGC after dark.
Yeah, we should, dude. That's hilarious.
RGC OnlyFans.
I'm gonna write that down. RGC After Dark and RGC OnlyFans.
Skinemax was bad. Just wait till RGC After Dark.
Oh my god. Well, all I think of is like I think of him in that costume that he had at the end of his show the other day. There, a few weeks back, the Gimp costume or whatever it was.
So I don't man, the Gimp. I part of me thinks that really was him in that Gimp suit, but he swears to death it's not.
It's totally him. The one with the drum banging the drum. That wasn't him. I assumed it was him.
He says it's not. It's apparently the Gimp messaged him out of nowhere, and
this is fantastic.
Yeah, and then he said that the Gimp went like completely silent, and then out of nowhere the Gimp messaged him saying something like, "Please don't judge my lifestyle," or something like that. So again, TC is the most unpredictable person I know.
He's awesome.
On would be a lot of fun.
Well, yeah. Thanks everybody for stopping by. Appreciate all the love in the chat. So again, this is the Retro Gamer Chronicles, the RGC podcast. We'll be back at some point soon, hopefully. I know, again, love doing this. So thanks for watching. Thanks for being engaged. And any questions you guys have, reach out to us. And the next topic could be something that we all talk about on air together. So let's kind of go from there. And I will talk to you. We'll see you all soon.
See ya.
Thanks,
Bye.
guys.